The Center for Internet Security is a non-profit organization with the mission to identify, develop, validate, and promote best practice solutions for cyber defense. Experts and IT professionals from different organizations, including government, businesses, and institutions across the globe, they participate and they finalize the controls based on consensus decision-making model. And why this is coming today, the topic is I think, which I read, is the 15 biggest data breaches of the 21st century, and the way a lot of cyber attacks are coming into even our emails and personally a lot of. So I thought to just go through this session. Let's hear the intro.
Welcome to the OTech Talks podcast, where it's all about working on technologies. You will hear the latest tech information, and your host, Kashif Manzoor, brings together product overviews, how-tos, best practices, tips and tricks, and troubleshooting techniques.
Welcome to Open Tech Talks podcast. Your host Kashif Manzoor is with you. Today's session number is 95. Unbelievable. We are almost reaching to 100 sessions. If you're new to the show, OTech Talks is your weekly sandbox for technology insights, experimentation, and inspiration with the primary objective of learning and sharing. If you're an existing audience, thank you so much. I really appreciate from bottom of my heart. You are inspiration to me. Your feedback, which you're sharing with me, that's always inspiring me to keep recording and keep pushing the boundaries to learn and share with you. And that's how we are learning and sharing with each other, head to head. Thank you so much. Really appreciate. And the way we started today's session, and I think why it comes into my mind, because I was doing, while my professional work, I was doing, when as a cloud architect, what are the best practices which industry is recognizing, and when I was doing landing zone configuration architecture for Oracle solutions. So I came to know this CIS OCA Foundation benchmark. There was a GitHub repository and the configuration is published and the reference architecture. And going through in a detail and putting myself to learn it, and I understood how important is the CIS Foundation is, playing a role to promote the security best practices, and I really like it. And all the vendors, Oracle, Alibaba, Cloud, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, everyone has their CIS Controls benchmarks or guides over there so that you can go and configure it, and we'll go through in a later session in detail. Now, as we started with the CIS, so let's get into some basics, definition and what is the objective of the Center for Internet Security, Critical Security Controls for Effective Cyber Defense. This is a publication of best practice guidelines for computer security. And this is what I'm taking from Wikipedia. And the project was initiated early in 2008 in response to extreme data losses experienced by organizations in the U.S. defense industrial base. The publication was initially developed by the SANS Institute. Ownership was then transferred to the Council on Cybersecurity, CCS, in 2013, and then transferred to Center for Internet Security, CIS, in 2015. It was originally known as the Consensus Audit Guidelines, and it is also known as the CIS, CSC, CIS 20, CCS, CSC, or different SANS Top 20 or CH 20. So that's a common guidelines on from our point of view. But what are their objective is? The Center for Internet Security is a non-profit organization with a mission or an aim to identify, develop, validate, promote, and sustain best practices solution for cyber defense. and IT professionals from different organizations and different experts and even institutes of business across the globe are participating and finalizing the controls. And these professionals institutes participate and then finalize the controls based on the consensus decision-making model. And we need to link this one, why it's very important and critical, for every one of us and even every organization. So if you relate to this one with the most recent data breaches of the 21st century, and we are linking these CIS to breaches which are happening. So I have got a chance to read the article on data breaches affecting millions of users and some of the biggest, and even they're calling it baddest breaches in recent times, published by CSO Online. And it's published on 16th of July. 16th of July. Yeah, it's published on 16th July 2021 by csoonline.com, and I will add into the show notes so you can the link. The title is the 15 biggest data breaches of the 21st century. And the way they described it, they added some of the 15 breaches. I'm just naming some of them. Now, on the number one, Yahoo, date August 2013, impact 3 billion accounts. Right, Alibaba, date November 2019, impact 1.1 billion pieces of user data. LinkedIn, number 3rd, June 2021, 700 million users. Professional networking giant LinkedIn now saw data associated with 700 millions of its users posted on a dark web. Sina Weibo, March 2020, 538 million accounts. Facebook, April 2019, 533 million users. In April 2019, it was revealed that 2 data sets from Facebook apps had been exposed to the public internet. Marriott International, Starwood, September 2018, 500 million customers. You could list continue. 7, Yahoo, 14, 500 million accounts. 80, number 8, Adult Friend Finder, October 2016, 412 million accounts. MySpace, year 2013, 360 million user accounts. NetEase, October 2015. Court Ventures, Experian, 200 million personal records. And LinkedIn again, June 2012, 160 million users. Dubsmash, December 2018. Adobe, October 2013. MyFitnessPal, February 2018, 150 million user accounts. MyFitnessPal. So all this data is available on a public article written by CSO Online. And now you can imagine the way these breaches are happening all over the world and across the different time zones. So when you say time zone, I mean different years, starting from 2012 onward, and the most recent are. So I tried to link this one to these breaches, and then when I started reading and learning about the CIS benchmarks and CIS controls, I like it. Because that's the bare minimum, giving you instructions and the benchmarks that you can implement in your organization. Now, let's get some basics. What is the CIS benchmarks? The CIS controls consists of a recommended best practice to secure systems and devices. And CIS benchmarks are rules for hardening specific operating systems, middleware, software applications, and network devices. So these are hardening rules. The CIS controls and the CIS benchmarks are developed using consensus-based approach by communities of experts. Until they reach a consensus, they keep discussing and arriving on the conclusion. CIS controls map to many established standards and regulatory frameworks, including the NIST Cybersecurity Framework, CSF, and NIST SP 800. So we'll go through in a later session, what they have done a wonderful work is they have mapped it into number of other widely used standards. For example, if you go onto the CIS sites, then they will give you the comparison of the mapping. What are the controls mapped to, for example, National Institute of Standards and Technology, which is commonly known as NIST, International Organization for Standardization, ISO, Payment Card Industry Data Security Standards, PCI, the famous one, PCI DSS, then HIPAA, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, COBIT, Control Objectives of Information and Related Technologies, then Federal Information Security Modernization, Federal Financial Institutions Examinations Council, DHS CDM, Department of Homeland Security, Data Security and Protection Toolkit Standards. All these standards, they are CIS is giving you the mapping to that one. And then another important to keep in mind that when a lot of customers do the vendor qualification, they usually, for example, if I'm an IT or a system administrator or an IT executive, so if I want to, as a customer, if I want to qualify and shortlist some vendors, then I'm usually using those are called as vendor assessment questionnaires, right? Even you have seen it. Those are usually part of the RFPs where you use the standard IT vendor assessment questionnaires. And there are even famous standard questionnaires, and I will again write in the show notes the link which are talking about 5 of the top questionnaires for IT vendor assessments. And those are primarily starting from, these are in alphabetical order. Center for Internet Security, the CIS for Internet Security, CIS Critical Security Controls. So that's one of a lot of organizations use this one. Then there is a CISA, Cloud Security Alliance Consensus Assessments Initiative Questionnaire. That's again very, very common, which organization is using. It's provide industry accepted ways to document what security controls exist in, IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS offerings. Then there is a third one on the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST. And the purpose of NIST 800-171 framework is to help protect controlled, unclassified information in non-federal systems and organizations. Then another one, fourth, is Shared Assessments Group Standardized Information Gathering Questionnaire. That's again, some of the customers are using it. Then the fifth one is on the Vendor Security Alliance VSA Questionnaire. So this is first published in 2016 and then was designed specifically to help companies vet their supplier security practices. There are some of the more also coming, like higher education cloud vendor assessment tools, which is common. So these are some of the questionnaires which all the organizations are using. So if you see from a CIS control point of view, there are that you will get, it will help you to security from a security perspective. These benchmarks help you to build and maintain a security profile in line with industry best practices. It will help you to eliminate configuration settings that are known to be insecure or which need to be done in a more best practice way. And then it also supports you to protect the organization from known threats. And then, it can help you to offload unnecessary cyber risk by narrowing the attack surface to only what is necessary. So these are some of the benefits from a security perspective. Then definitely another area is when you want to ensure that you are covering the security area, then there is another area is only the compliance perspective. So if you see from a compliance like NIST, CSF, ISO or PCI or HIPAA, so the organization, if they're using these CIS security framework, maintaining the configuration in line with the CIS benchmarks, it gives a boost to the compliance requirement. And if you're ensuring it, you're doing it, then most probably you will be meeting the number of compliance requirements which are required according to these different guidelines or standards. So these controls and benchmarks should not be considered as an exhaustive list of all possible security configurations and architectures. But definitely it's a starting point, and it gives you an overall base, that now your base is done, which are common for security breaches. And then based on your organization role, your IT requirement, you need to evaluate specific situation, your systems or workloads, and then what are the compliance requirements which is required for you. So you can tailor it and then you can implement it. Now, specific to CIS, in CIS 8, which is the latest version, CIS 8, the number of controls are reduced to 18 from 20, because in CIS they were 20, so now they have made it into 18, like groups. And in CIS 8 contains 153 safeguards, so in which used to be called in CIS 7 as a sub-controls, and they were almost 171 sub-controls. So now in CIS 8, it contains 153 safeguards. So that's how they categorized these controls. Now, CIS benchmarks provides two levels of security settings. Level 1 recommends essential basic security requirements that can be configured on any system and should cause little or no interruption of service or reduced functionality. Level 2 recommends security settings for environments requiring greater security that could result in some reduced functionality. There are 7 core strategies for categories of CIS benchmarks. So if you're not clear about what are the CIS benchmarks are best practices for secure configuration of target systems. Just to repeat it. And these are 100 plus CIS benchmarks available across 25 plus vendor product families. That's how the wider range is available. Now there are core 7 categories for CIS benchmarks. Operating systems benchmarks. It covers security configurations of core operating systems such as Microsoft Windows, Linux, Apple operating system. These includes best practices guidelines for local and remote access restrictions, user profiles, driver installation protocols, and internet browser configurations. Second category is server software benchmarks. Covers security configurations of widely used server software, including Microsoft Windows Server, SQL Server, VMware, Docker, and Kubernetes. These benchmarks include recommendations for configuring Kubernetes PKI certificates, API server settings, server domain controls, storage restrictions, all. Third is cloud provider benchmarks. They address security configurations for cloud providers. Example is Oracle, AWS, Microsoft Azure, Google, IBM, Alibaba Cloud. And they include guidelines for configuring identity and access management, system logging protocols, network configuration, and regulatory compliance safeguards. And this is the area from where I'm working on it, and I came to know CIS benchmarks and CIS guidelines. Then definitely there are fourth category, which is mobile device benchmarks, addressing mobile operating systems, including iOS and Android, and focus on areas like developer options and settings, privacy configuration, browser settings, app permissions. Fifth is network service benchmarks, offer general and vendor-specific security configuration guidelines for network devices, for example, Cisco, Palo Alto Networks, Juniper, and others. Six is desktop software benchmarks. They cover security configurations for example, Microsoft Office, Exchange Server, Google Chrome, Mozilla for Firefox, and Safari browser. So they focus on email privacy and other server settings. Seventh which is multifunction print device benchmarks. They outline security best practices for configuring multifunction printers in Office settings and cover such topics as firmware updating, TCP/IP configuration, wireless access configuration, user management. So these are these are common 7 categories, covers all our touch points where the infrastructure, IT, applications, mobile is linked to even organizations and even individual you as a citizen or any individual, like me, myself, right? So I like it. That's why I thought to share with you, and that's a very good area to spend some time on and to learn on it. Now we got to know what is CIS benchmarks, what are the CIS controls, what are the different categories they are maintaining it, what is the background, how they are mapping to the industry standards, and why this is very important. Keeping in mind the industry breaches which are happening. Now, let's go in a one level down so that we can read it in more detail. And I will do a comparison between release 7 and CIS 8 because a lot of organizations and benchmarks are still available for 7 and 8. So as we discussed, there are levels. So the level 1 profile is considered as a base recommendation. And this can be implemented very quickly. And it is designed to not have an extensive performance impact. And the intent of the level 1 profile benchmarking is to lower the attack surface to your organization while keeping machines usable and not hindering business functionality. That's the core objective of level 1. And the level 2 is considered to be defense in depth and is intended for environment where security is paramount, security is the key or critical. And these recommendations associated with the level 2 can have an slightly effect on your organization, maybe if it's not implemented properly or appropriately, and if you're not taking care of it, if you're not maintaining it. And based on these two profiles, what the next thing is done, there are some other Department of Defense Cloud Computing and Security Technical Guidelines, which is commonly called as STIG, STIG. Those are basically security technical implementation security technical implementation guides are specific available to meet certain requirements. So based on these two levels, now if we talk about from a level CIS Control 7, there were 3 distinct categories. Now these categories were basic from CIS Controls 1 to 6, which were should be implemented in every organization for essential cyber defense readiness. Then foundational CIS Controls 7 to number 16. They were basic. These technical best practices provide clear security benefits and are a smart move for any organization to implement. And then organizational, they were from Controls 17 to 20. And these controls are different in character from 1 to 16. While they have many technical elements, CIS Controls 1720 are more focused on people and processes involved in cybersecurity. So these were as part of CIS Controls 7. Basic, foundational, and organizational. Now if you see from a basics point of view, the targets were as a journal. Their targets were to address current attacks, emerging technologies, and changing mission business requirements for IT. As part of your fundamental promise, the CIS controls have, been updated, reordered to reflect both the availability of new cybersecurity attack tools and changes in the current threat. So it's not that one time it's prepared and then it's done. So it's a continuous process. Then definitely these guidance for each of these major security topics is covered by CIS Control 7 in a more deeper way, and then I think I would suggest you to go on CIS websites and then you can go get it more details, and I will add it in the show notes. So if you talk about high level, CIS controls are basic under the basic inventory of hardware assets, inventory of software assets, then vulnerability management, administrative privileges, secure configuration for hardware and software, maintenance, monitoring and analysis of audit logs. Foundational were email and web browsers protection, malware defense, data recovery capabilities, boundary defense, data protection, and then many more. Organization were implement security awareness and training program, application software security, incident response and management, penetration tests, and real-time and red team exercises. So these were some of the organizational controls. So now if we move to our 7 control CIS 8. So I thought to just highlight the CIS 7, and then we'll spend more time on CIS 8 because these are the current. And the CIS 8, they changed the dynamics and the way they were categorized. So in CIS 8, Controls 8 basically, they've introduced the implementation groups. Rather than those basics, foundational and organizational, now they are introduced as implementation groups. And these implementation groups are the recommended guidance to prioritize implementation of the CIS controls. They are based on the risk profiles and resources any organization has available to them to implement these CIS controls. Now, each implementation group, which is called IG1, IG2, and IG3, if you will read it commonly. Each IG, which is implementation group, identifies a set of safeguards, which we previously in the CIS 7 was referred as subcontrols. And each IG identifies what are the safeguards need to be implemented. There is a total of 153 safeguards in 8. So every organization should start with IG1. And IG1 is defined as a basic cyber hygiene, the foundational set of cyber defense safeguards that every organization should apply to guard against the most common attacks. And then once you now have done the IG1 implemented, then IG2 builds upon IG1, and IG3 is comprised of all the controls and safeguards. That's how these now in the CIS 8 they are categorized. Now, if we'll go on the CIS controls point of view, what happens is these IG1 list of CIS controls into safeguard, each, for example, if I will give you an example, there's a control is 01. This is a control 01. Inventory and control of enterprise assets. So under this category, there are total 5 safeguards. So if you will implement 2, those are coming as part of IG1. Then the next 2 comes in IG2, implementation group 2. And then the last one comes, the 5th one, in IG3. So in IG3, you will have 5 out of 5 implemented. Similarly, if you go control 02, which is inventory and controls of software assets. So they have that category has 7 safeguards. Similarly, control 3 is data protection. And I think I will go in a one by one on these controls because these are 18 controls and we should be very clear on this one. So, but before going into these 18 controls, there is some major change with respect to 7 and 8, which I thought to share with you. And then we will go back to the CIS 8 to cover in a more detail. What happens in the CIS control of admin privileges, secure configuration, they are combined along with secure configuration of network devices, and they are added into secure configuration for enterprise assets. So what they've done it in CIS controls, there were 20, so they are clubbed together and added into another subheadings. And now that's why there are in version 8 there are 18 subcontrols. The CIS controls, what we will do, I'm just thinking on the fly. I think it just comes in my mind while seeing the total time of this session. So this session is going beyond the standard timelines. So what I'm thinking is to just pick it 2 parts. The 18 CIS controls in details we will go in the next session, and we will try to conclude our today's session where the topic started from a CIS controls point of view, and then how the other cloud vendors, basically, when I was architecting a solution from a cloud vendor's point of view, and there are CIS Oracle Cloud Infrastructure Foundations benchmarks, similarly for Microsoft, AWS, Alibaba, IBM. So everyone has their guidelines and their benchmarks published on CIS website. And I will add it in a show notes, so where you can go and you can download these. After registering, you can download these guidelines. And frankly, even these guidelines are available, and most of the cloud vendors, what they have done is they they have published their landing zones and the configuration or template. For example, while I'm working on Oracle's, from where this topic comes in my mind, to build the landing zone for standardized deployment on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. So where Oracle has their own CIS OCA Foundation benchmarks guideline is published, and even what you can is there is a template available, and which standard reference architecture is available. So what you can do, it's there are reference implementation written in Terraform. It's available on the GitHub. So what you can do, you can have a reference architecture with the resources and the services which commonly are the basic requirement to meet the CIS controls. And even if you use the GitHub, and it will take you a few minutes to configure and ready infrastructure which is meeting the required guidelines and the benchmarks. And even then, it provides you the scripts that perform compliance checks for most of the CIS OCA Foundation benchmark recommendations. So this script is based on the Terraform code, and you can use and find out, okay, what are the standard configurations for example, configuring security rules, for configuring compartments, IAM policies, networking, how I'm gonna distribute the subnets. So that's part of all the standard configuration. It's just a matter of using the Terraform scripts on GitHub, and you are ready with your basics of notifications, vulnerability scanning, logging events, how the Cloud Guard is being used to give the compliance and reports. So I like it, and my even plan was, I already did a video on that one, so my plan was to publish the video on even YouTube. But there are a number of reference standards available if you will search on Oracle reference architecture and blogs, and I will add those blogs in the show notes. And from other cloud vendors, all the guidelines are published on the formal CIS website, so you can go and just register yourself and download it. That's the same thing I did it. So there are from CIS Alibaba Cloud Foundation benchmark, there is from CIS Amazon Web Services Foundation benchmark, there is Google Cloud Platform, then IBM Cloud Foundation, Microsoft Azure Foundation, and Oracle I already told you. So these guidelines gives you the basics that, okay, what are the quick starts each vendor has and how to get ready with your basics infrastructure and security guidelines. That's it for today. And what we will do in the next session, the part 2 of this one, we will go in detail and we will read all these 18 CIS control subnets which are available. We will go through in detail, and all the data and information which we are sharing today is based on the standard documents from the CISsecurity.org, and any disclaimer copyrights are with the CIS Security. My objective was only to learn and share with you guys. And these CIS controls and guides and everything is available on the standard website. You just need to register yourself and download. There is a full web guide on the CIS control where it talks about the overviews, CIS controls, and I like another thing is, inventory. For example, there's a inventory and control of enterprise assets. Why is this control critical? Procedures and tools. What are the safeguards? So that's we'll cover in our next second session. Once again, thank you so much for listening and sharing your very precious life's time to listen, spend, and share your feedback with me. And I'm very obliged, humble to you that you're sharing with me your comments And once again, thank you so much. Have a blessed life ahead. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the OTech Talks podcast, and be part of Tech Talks at otechtalks.tv. It's a turf to share ideas, insights, and innovations.